many of you have heard that little phrase or that little line? 1492, ocean sailed, ocean blue. All right, okay, just checking. Just making sure you're still all right. Now, in 1492, Columbus did set out on a mission. And his mission was to find a shorter trade route to the East Indies where he would have a shorter and better trade route to the Orient. The only problem is Columbus ended up in the Caribbean. And some say that that set a precedent that has been around for 523 years. And that precedent is this: men will never ask for directions when they're lost. All right? Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but we do hesitate at times asking for directions. And for some people like me, it's just an adventure. It's a journey. Well, I know what state I'm in. I'm not lost. We're going to get there eventually. All of us have probably at one time or another been on some type of journey in our lives. And whether it's looking at a map or not really is not that important, as it is on another journey that we're talking about. We are talking about a journey, and we're going to be talking about this summer, a journey of our lives. As we live this life, each day is a journey. And sometimes we are hesitant, whether you're a guy or a gal, you're hesitant to ask for directions. And what I want to challenge you with today, as we begin this sermon series, this summer, we're going to be looking at the little epistle of 1 John and 2 John and 3 John. And through these words, I hope that we will discover a journey within. Not on how to get to here or how to get to there, but as we live our lives, we are on a journey with God. We are dealing with things each and every day. And we will come to places in our lives where there are crossroads. And we'll have to make decisions on which way you go and which way you turn and what you do or what you don't do. And like any journey, we need to find the right path. So we're going to begin today this journey in 1 John. And I want to give you some background. I think it's important to understand that the books of the Bible were written by real people in real times to address real situations. So many times I think we just kind of forget about that and we don't try to relate. Why was this written? Why was the necessity? God didn't hand out assignments to the apostles and say, all right, John, it's your job. Before the end of the year, I want to see 3 epistles from you, okay? And they got to be at least 500 words each. You ever get one of those assignments in college or school? And you double space and you add words and all that just to make sure it fulfills the requirements. God didn't do that. He used men who were leaders in the church to address certain situations that were going on in the church, to help situations in people's lives in the things they were struggling with. And so it is with this little epistle of 1 John. Now, if you don't know where 1 John is, it's the last group of writings right before the book of Revelation in the New Testament. There are 3 little letters. The first letter is the longest, 5 chapters. That's what we'll be spending the majority of the time on this summer. It was written by the Apostle John. The Apostle John is the only apostle of the 12 that did not face a martyr's death other than Judas. He, though, was not entirely left alone. He became the leader in the eastern part of what is now Turkey. Then it was called Asia Minor. He was the leader of the church. And he wrote this little letter probably prior to him being exiled to the island of Patmos. The island of Patmos is a little island about 30 or 40 miles east or west off where Turkey, the coast of Turkey is now. It was actually in the territory of Greece and still is today. He was exiled to that island because of his faith, but before he left, he wrote a letter to the churches in Asia Minor. Probably many of the same churches he wrote the letter of Revelation to. Why did he write? Well, something was going on in the church there, in the Christians' lives. Some people would come along and they said, according to the Greek philosophy of that day, that flesh was evil. And the only thing that mattered was your spiritual nature. And the New Testament and the apostles and the writings of the New Testament said in John, exactly in the first chapter of John 1, said, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And down in verse 14 he says, and He became flesh among us. So there arose this philosophy in that day called Gnosticism. It was based on the special knowledge, the spiritual knowledge. And some people were saying, well, if Jesus is really the Son of God, He couldn't have come in flesh. He couldn't have been a real person. All that matters is we grasp His spiritual meaning. And there were some people in the church that took that and they fell away from the church. And John then writes this little letter as kind of a follow-up to his gospel to try to straighten out some wrong ideas. Because they were taking some wrong turns in their journey of faith as they came to maturity in Christ. So as we look at this little letter, we need to understand it was written to real people struggling with things in their life about what they believed, about who Jesus was, about how they related to Him, and what difference that made. And he writes these words to us today because there are still people today that struggle with who Jesus is and what they believe and what their relationship is to Him. So, let's begin the journey. You can grab the Pew Bible there if you want in front of you, or turn to 1 John. It's page 215 of the Pew Bible there. We're going to look at the first 7 verses today, but I'm going to break them down. I'm going to first deal with the first 2 verses, and here's the opening words of John, little epistle. We proclaim to you the one who existed from the beginning, whom we have seen and who we have heard. We saw Him with our eyes and touched Him with our own hands. He is the Word of life. This one who is life itself was revealed to us, and we have seen Him. And now we testify and proclaim to you that He is the one who is eternal life. He was with the Father, and then He was revealed to us. In these first 2 verses, I want you to think about this. In your journey, you need to make sure you know who you're following. You need to make sure. John sets out from the very beginnings, and I want to proclaim to you something that's a sure thing. His opening words echo John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. John continues to teach that. Did you catch that? To a group of people that might have been struggling, well, did Jesus really come to us in the flesh, or is it just spirit? What's going on here? He uses 3 key verbs in these opening verses to drive home the point. What's interesting about the Epistle of John, it's not like a normal letter. Many of Paul's letters, he would start out, this is the Apostle Paul, chosen by God to be His servant. I greet you in the church at Corinth, or Ephesus, or Philippi. Here John just starts out right from the get-go with who Jesus is. He uses 3 key verbs. He says, I heard. I heard. John was there when Jesus taught. John heard Him teach with authority like no one else ever taught. John was there when Jesus proclaimed to the people, your sins are forgiven. John was there when he heard the slashing of the whip through the temple, where Jesus was turning over tables and telling the money changers to get out because they turned to His Father's house into a den of thieves. John was there and heard the crunching of the leaves underneath the feet of Jesus as He walked from town to town, as He walked through the garden of Gethsemane. And John says, I heard with my own ears the things that He said when He was here. And he says, I saw it also. Jesus was there. John was there. John saw Him walking on the water that night when they were out on the boat and they weren't quite sure what was happening. John saw that. John was there. He saw them beat Jesus. He saw the death. He was at the foot of the cross. He saw the blood coming from the side of Jesus and His hands and His feet. He saw. You see that word and that phrase, it's actually kind of used there twice. These are the things I've heard and seen, and I saw Him. It is a word of contemplation. It's a word that means that He didn't just glance at these things, but He kind of pondered at these things. He just took it in. And He appreciated it. My family gives me a hard time because I like taking sunset pictures. If you're on my Facebook page, if you're not, you can go to it, Jeff Chiplet. We're creating my name there, but Jeff Chiplet. And I posted a sunset picture last night. And today is Judy and I's 35th anniversary. So where else would you go except Lover's Key? Alright, we got something going tonight. So we went out and had a picnic and a beautiful sunset last night. I love the sunsets. We were out a couple of weeks ago and Annie and Judy said, well, we've already seen the sunset. And I said, yeah, they haven't seen this one. They're all different. Sometimes it's just good to sit there and contemplate. And John says, I have seen, I have heard, I have pondered the things of God with my very own eyes. And then he says, he touched him. We don't usually visualize sometimes the disciples. I don't know if they gave high fives back then, but I can see the disciples, slapping Jesus on the back or giving a high five or something like that. Maybe when Jesus appeared in the upper room, maybe they gave him a hug. He touched him. He wasn't a ghost. His hand didn't just slide through him. And John starts off with his very first words of this epistle, and he says, look, I've seen him, I've heard him, I've touched him. He's real in the flesh. He is God in flesh, and he is the one which I proclaim to you. We need to know who we're following. It makes a difference what you're following. About a month or so ago, Robert and I and Nick Campbell went up to Kissimmee, Florida to meet Alex, who you'll be meeting here later, our intern for the summer. And someone gave me directions afterwards to try to get out of Kissimmee. Where the college is, it's right along, what's the name of that strip there where all the stuff is? There's everything in there. It takes you an hour to go 10, it's crazy. So, someone told me about a back way out. So, all right, I'm going to go out, I'm going to go east out of Kissimmee, and we're going to head south, and then you cut across down there. Well, I looked at my GPS on my phone, and I noticed where this person told me to turn. I thought, wow, this road goes all the way down, and you can catch on the road a little further down to go across, so I'll go that way. So driving along, and we get to the point where you're supposed to get off the road, and all of a sudden the road turns east. And there was no exit there. Now, the lines were so close on my GPS, I thought I was following the right path. But I wasn't. I saw some parts of Florida I never knew existed that day. So along with Nick and Robert, we went almost really to the east coast of Florida, caught the road on the way back, and saw some nice country. What happened? I thought I was following the right path, but I wasn't. If we're not careful, that'll happen to you in life. You'll have some people come along and say, oh, you want to go on a journey? Come with me. Just hang with me. Do what I want to do. We'll have a great time together. You might hesitate. Yeah, but I'm not sure if that looks right. Oh, trust me. Trust me. And John declares to us, we need to know who we're following. In verses 3 or 4, he goes on to say, look, we proclaim to you what we ourselves have actually seen and heard, so that you may have fellowship with us. And our fellowship is with the Father and with His Son, Jesus Christ. We are writing these things so that you may fully share our joy. In your journey, not only do you need to know who you're following, but you need to know if you have the right companions. Are you hanging with the right people? Are you traveling with the right people along the way? This word fellowship is a key word in these opening verses. Now, we in the church honestly have done a disservice to the word fellowship. When you hear the word fellowship in the church, what do you usually think of? Potluck dinner, all right? Now, I love potluck dinners just like the next guy, all right? At the end of this month, during the summer, we're going to use the last Sunday of each month to be a potluck dinner. Bring in some food, just have a time of fellowship. But you know what? If you do a study of the word fellowship in the New Testament, you'll find it goes much, much deeper than that. In fact, it was never used in connection to a potluck dinner. It meant sharing life together. It meant seeing a need and working together to meet that need. It meant knowing each other to the point that you were there for that other person when they needed something. And when John says here, we proclaim to you what we ourselves have actually seen and heard so that you may have fellowship with us. He's not inviting them over to lunch. He's saying this is so important that we want to share life together. And what we share together makes a difference for eternity. And John wanted them to be a part of that. He didn't want them to go off the path. He wanted them to stay on the journey. He wanted them to make it through to the very end. Who are you hanging with? Who's the one that you're following the most? Have you found a fellowship among believers that you can share life with? We should help guide each other along the way. I read a story about this lady that was going to drive the road up to Alaska. She was going to actually drive from Alberta, Canada to the Yukon. And she didn't know that that road, really, she shouldn't try in her broken down Honda Civic. But she decided to try to make that drive in the Honda Civic, which on a road which is usually reserved for four-wheel drive vehicles. And she took off on the journey, and she finally came to this truck stop along the way, and a very small truck stop, and she walks in, and these two truckers there, and they invite her to join her, and then she didn't know how to say no because there was only 3 people in the place. So she sat down with them and said, "Hey, where are you going?" And she said, "Oh, I'm trying to head up to this town called White Horse." They looked out of her car and said, "And that thing?" He says, "Well, yeah. What's wrong?" He says, "No way. You'll never make it in weather like this." "Well, I'm determined to try," she said. And then the trucker said, "Okay, well, we'll have to hug you." She backed up and said, "You're not going to hug me." He said, No, that's not what I was talking about. So what we're going to do is one truck will go in front, your car will go in the middle, and the truck will go behind. And we'll hug you all the way up. And they led her through the paths. And she got there safely. She was on the journey with those that took care of her. That's what fellowship is. That's why it's so important in the church that we find that fellowship. And even in a small crowd like we have in these services, we have fellowship, but it's not the same as sharing life together. And that's why, being in a Bible school class or a small group or some midweek Bible study can be so important because it's there where you share life together. We have a couple of small groups. We call them life groups that go now on Sunday evenings. We're going to be starting up another one at the end of June, the last Sunday night of June. We're going to start another one. It's going to meet at our house, and we're going to run it for 3 or 4 months, and then we're going to let that go and have someone lead that. So if you're not a part of a small group, or you'd like to be a part of a small group where you begin sharing life together, you're invited last Sunday in June. We're doing more of that. John says, "I want you to have the fellowship that I share." And he shared his fellowship with God the Father and the Son, Jesus Christ. And he says that's the same fellowship that we all can share together. So I encourage you, seek out the right companions on this journey. Seek out someone that you can share life together in your walk of faith. We can find companions in a lot of places, and a lot of people do find companions in a lot of different ways. The one that really makes a difference is who you're going to share the fellowship of the gospel. Who's that going to be? So John goes on, verses 5 through 7. And this section wraps up and he says, "Look, this is the message we have heard from Jesus and now declare to you. God is light, and there is no darkness in him at all. So we are lying if we say we have fellowship with God, but go on living in spiritual darkness. We are not practicing the truth. But if we are living in the light, as God is in the light, then we have fellowship with each other, and on the blood of Jesus, His Son, that cleanses us from all sin. In your journey, go with the light. Go with the light. In verse 5, we find out where our focus should be on the journey. This is the message which we have heard from Jesus. He talks about God being light. That's a pretty common image in the Bible. God is light. And it's mentioned several times in the New Testament, especially by John in his writings. Light gets us through the darkness. And when you're surrounded by darkness, light is oh so important. I remember once, I think I was a freshman in high school, me and a couple of my buddies, we were going to camp out out by in the woods behind his house one night. And we started off, and it wasn't quite dark, but when we got into the woods and things, it was dark and we needed the light. And he had a lantern. And he went and started pumping that lantern. It's one of those old gas ones, they still make it today. And took the match and he put it in there and it went poof. And went out. Well, me and my buddy, there were three of us, me and my buddy and the guy that brought the lantern. Me and my buddy, we ran behind the tree and said, all right, you light the thing. We were there to help him. We're going to support him all the way. So we leave him in the middle and he's down there trying to light this thing. Finally got it going. Light made all the difference on a dark path. And then we're able to go to where we intended to go. In your journey, go with the light. It makes a difference what your source, what's giving you direction on the path. Several years ago, my brother who lives in south of Indianapolis, Franklin, Indiana, was going to join me. I'd go fishing in Paris, Tennessee at Kentucky Lake every year. Some of the guys from the church would go down there for a spring fishing trip. And one year he wanted to join us. So I said, that's great. So he drove down. And this was right when MapQuest was becoming popular on the internet. Right? It had GPSs and you didn't have your cell phones where you could get all of that. But you could get online and you could print out the directions to get where from point A to point B. So he got on there, printed out his directions through MapQuest, and started on the road. Well, he was late getting to us. Well, I wonder where he is. What happened? Well, when he got there, he said, well, I got lost. He said, I followed the directions to MapQuest, and I'm going through Kentucky, and it says turn on this road, and I go down this road, and turn on this other road, and it said the roads kept getting smaller, and finally he was on this road. It was almost a dirt path, and he comes up, and he sees a sign up front, and it says, caution, you are now entering the artillery range of Fort Campbell. He decided that his directions weren't necessarily the best. His source was not accurate. What are you using to get you through life? What's your source? There's a ton of things you can turn. You turn to the internet and you can look up anything and find 1,000 different opinions on it. You can turn on TV and, Dr. Phil will help you get through life. You can find all kinds of things that are willing to give you direction. What is it that gets us through the darkness of this world? John says, look, God is light. In Him there is no darkness. And then he takes it a step further. He says, look, as you make this journey, you need to understand that if we say we are in the fellowship, if we are part of the body of Christ, if we are followers of God, then we must get rid of the spiritual darkness in our lives. We must live in the light as God is in the light. And it's then that we have fellowship with one another. How you live makes a difference. What you say makes a difference. The decisions you make makes a difference. The words you use make a difference. How you react make a difference. Who you follow makes a difference. Who your companions are makes a difference. John tells us if we think we can say one thing and do something else, we're just fooling ourselves. And the light is not in us. And we are full of darkness. The direction you go tells a story. If you tell me you're headed towards Naples and you're going to go down to Naples, and you go out and you turn left of Bonita Beach Road and you get on the exit ramp and I see you going north, I can tell you you're not going to Naples. You can go north for a long time and never get to Naples on I-70. Just because you told me you were going to Naples doesn't mean you're going. What tells me you're going is that you turn in the right direction and you follow God. So it is with our faith. John says, well, it does make a difference. It does make a difference. I don't know if you've ever paid attention to the graphics that we use with sermons. You can go ahead and put up that next slide. It's a bigger one of the graphic up there. But on that slide, all right, just look at the little one. Look at the board. There it is, all right. You might notice what's up in the upper left-hand corner there. It's caterpillars. Anybody understand what's on the right-hand side? All right, you all pass. All right. Now, somewhere between that caterpillar and that butterfly, there's an amazing journey. Because that caterpillar somewhere along his life will stop, decide to hang on a branch that they can spin this cocoon called a chrysalis. And then on the inside of that chrysalis, an amazing transformation will take place. An ugly caterpillar will become a beautiful butterfly. It's an amazing journey. It's an amazing journey. Well, why use that? Because our walk with Christ can be an amazing journey. As we look at His Word in the epistles of John and what He has to say to us, I hope that it's an amazing journey with Him. And that we can come to the point where we say, I've seen some transformation. I've seen some change. I have a desire to walk in the light as He is in the light. To be all that God has created me to be. So are you ready for the journey? Are you willing to let Him work from the inside out to do what He's called you to do? I pray that we all.